not just in India, but overall around the globe. The next 50 years is going to be a boom in the space field, realizing how much we can leverage space and bring back the benefits to our planet. A lot of development in science where we bring back those benefits to Earth, and it's literally benefiting us on Earth. And so we've realized the importance of exploration. My own passion about exploration, whether that's of outer space or the inner space, and I couldn't think of a better pair. That's why I call them my cosmic dad and my space mom on the same stage. When I was thinking about the mental and physical challenges astronauts go through in space, the first thing that came to my mind, and I told Sadhguru, I want to take Shambhavi into space. Now for the Artemis mission, we are actually building new spacesuits after 50 plus years that will be landing on the moon, and astronauts will be operating in these new spacesuits. It's truly a privilege to be born in a land so ancient with such rich culture and heritage, where we've really spent thousands of years investing in evolution of human spirit through various aspects, whether it's philosophy, science, or arts. I see science and arts go together.
You train the astronauts, probably go through the operations first. So what does it feel like to be in a spacesuit?
That's why I love my job a lot, because you get to play astronaut as well. Again, I'm very biased for my team because we probably do the coolest thing at NASA.
Welcome back to another episode of Isha Vibes. We are your hosts.
I am Sarvesh.
And I'm Smriti.
And we are 12th grade students of Isha Homeschool. Okay, let's be honest. Most of us in class 11 or 12 are just trying to survive our physics practicals without breaking like a voltmeter or something. For most of us, space is just something from like a chapter of a textbook or sci-fi movies.
We are so excited to introduce today's guest, NASA scientist Dr. Kavya Manyapu, who has basically done it all.
No, seriously though. MIT?
Check.
Boeing?
Check.
NASA?
Check.
She's leading their cutting-edge research. Dr. Kavya is working on the Artemis mission and developing spacesuits which are going to take humans to the moon for the first time in over 50 years.
She's also a trained pilot, a scuba diver, and a Bharatanatyam dancer.
Basically, Aka's that one super talented cousin that our parents always compare us to.
Dr. Kavya Manyapu, we've been reading your bio and we have so many questions.
Thank you so much for having me here. Namaskaram.
Namaskaram. Yeah, Aka, so the first question. So a lot of these space agencies, they're like pouring thousands of people and like billions of dollars into interplanetary exploration. What is like the end goal of these space agencies? What are they aiming towards?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I wouldn't start by saying there is an end goal, because exploration in itself is endless, right? And so over the last 50 years, and actually let me take you back to history for a moment. Back in the 60s, when we first landed on the moon, it was primarily driven by geopolitics. There was a Cold War happening, and even a few years before that, when when Russia first landed the Sputnik, and then we did our first mission, it was all sort of driven by the Cold War and the geopolitics. And once we landed on the moon, we've done 6 missions, and we got back. And then came the next steps in human spaceflight and in spaceflight in general, where communications, satellite industry boomed, as well as human spaceflight industry started booming. And once we developed the International Space Station in the last 30 years and have been having frequent travel to space, we've been sending both astronauts and cosmonauts to space and working collaboratively with 14 different countries, and United States and Russia being the primary collaborators on the International Space Station. We've seen the tremendous amount of benefit that we gain for the betterment of humanity and life on Earth. Whether you take cell phone development, right, communications, television, cable, as well as now with all the research that's happening on the International Space Station, like medicine, there's material science development, pharmaceuticals, what have you. Like there's a lot of development in science where we bring back those benefits to Earth, and it's literally benefiting us on Earth. And so we've realized the importance of exploration, not just for the sake of exploration, because I think as humans, we are innately curious. We always want to know what's out there. And we've also, Sadhguru often says, as humans, we're longing to break our boundaries. I think that is our inherent nature. But at the same time, we've now realized over these past 50, 60 years of exploring space that there's more than just scientific exploration. There's something that we can do better on Earth. And so we've had several spin-offs that came out of this. And I think it's a natural transition now to not only go to low Earth orbit destinations, but also go to Moon, Mars, and beyond, where we can also understand like the fundamental questions: are we alone in the universe, right?
Yeah.
And what can we learn from these other extraterrestrial planets and the Moon, where we can bring back lessons to help protect our own planet?
Okay, you mentioned that cosmonaut and astronaut. What's the difference between them?
Yeah, so people who fly to space from Russia, they're called cosmonauts.
Oh.
And everywhere else we call them astronauts, and Chinese call them taikonauts.
Oh.
Is there any particular reason?
I think it's just a choice of words. I mean, somebody who travels in space, right? Astros is the same as space, and cosmos is the same as space. And I believe taiko, the word in China, means space.
Akka, you mentioned Mars, and Elon Musk is also pumping a lot of his resources into what seems to be the same mission as taking humanity to Mars. So is this a collaborative effort or a competition?
It's absolutely, I see it as a collaborative effort, especially with how things are shaping now in the space field. For example, even at NASA, we now have the Artemis mission that will be taking humans to the Moon. And eventually, our goal is to take them to Mars. And again, for the same reasons, not just for exploration, which is a larger context, but also scientific development and technology development. And so, as part of the Artemis missions, we as in like NASA, the public sector, is actually collaborating with the commercial sector, whether that's SpaceX led by Elon Musk or Blue Origin led by Jeff Bezos. And they are actually developing elements and the infrastructure needed to help us go to the Moon. So this is a collaborative effort. And it's really wonderful to see that the private sector is now as much invested heavily as much as NASA and other space agencies around the world are invested in expanding our knowledge of space.
Okay, you talked about the mission, right? Like what the end goal was. What is like your role in this this mission?
Yeah, so I currently work at NASA leading our, so at NASA we have different directorates. Our directorate, the one I work in, is called Flight Operations Directorate. So our directorate is responsible for planning space missions, training astronauts and flight controllers, as well as executing the mission sitting in Mission Control Center. For example, like when you watched Mangalyaan, I hope you did. Yeah. You have this large room and people making decisions real time, and then Akshay Khanna saying, go, all that. So that's the role during the mission. And my team particularly trains astronauts in how to operate spacesuits and how to perform spacewalks. And our adjacent teams also work in how all of the crew operations happen. How do you operate a spacecraft and other things? So my team specifically focuses on the spacesuit and spacewalk side of it. And now for the Artemis mission, we are actually building new spacesuits after like 50 plus years that will be landing on the Moon, and astronauts will be operating in these new spacesuits. So it's an exciting time for us because we've learned a lot of lessons in the past. The entire International Space Station was actually built in orbit by our astronauts. So it's like Lego pieces where we've sent these Lego pieces, and then astronauts helped us put everything together in space, which is all done by spacewalking. So we've learned a lot of lessons from there. And now we are really excited to apply all of that. And it's a slightly different environment, going from microgravity to being on the Moon, because there are other challenges as well, being able to do spacewalks on the Moon. So I lead our Flight Operations Directorate, that division, to get these suits ready, that they're built well, they're safe for our astronauts, and we can actually accomplish the goals that we need to on the Moon, science and other things. and also helping plan the lunar spacewalks.
Okay, you mentioned that you train the astronauts and stuff. So to be able to do that, you probably go through the operations first. So what does it feel like to be in a spacesuit?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I love my job a lot, because you get to play astronaut as well. And again, I'm very biased for my team because we probably do the coolest thing at NASA because we actually have to train in spacesuits and learn about spacesuits and then train astronauts. So one of the coolest things about our job is so to train for spacewalks, whether you're doing a spacewalk in microgravity, which is, the International Space Station is in microgravity, or the moon, there's no easy way to simulate no gravity on Earth. But there are a couple of ways that we train them. One is underwater. So if you're ever in Houston, you should come by and see the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, which is a very large swimming pool. And we have an entire mock-up, full-scale mock-up of the International Space Station, which is as big as a football field underwater. Okay. So we train astronauts in spacesuits underwater because that's the closest we can simulate to being in micro-G using the buoyancy of water. And so we do all of our micro-G spacewalk training underwater. And then we also have other facilities there where we offload the spacesuit to simulate both lunar and microgravity. So as part of that process, we as trainers get to train. So we need to get certified as dive certified to dive in the water, and all the other aspects as well need to be physically fit, mentally stable. So we check off all those boxes before we get to train and actually learn the spacesuit. How do you operate the spacesuit? And the more important skill is, you always have to be ready to understand the failure that happens and then what's next, right? Like, what are the workarounds? What is my next option? So I have to also understand this machine in and out before we can deliver that knowledge to our astronauts to prepare them.
Okay, I remember in your session, you talked about a spacewalk like being like you're running a marathon and you're writing the SAT at the same time. What actually makes it so like demanding physically and mentally?
Wow, you have a good memory. That was, I think it was like last year, right?
Yeah.
It is, because when we do spacewalks, it lasts anywhere between 7 to 8 hours at a time.
Wow.
And being in a spacesuit is not easy. I mean, think about it. You're literally trapped in this, mini spacecraft. You cannot be claustrophobic in order to do that. Plus, you have to be like totally focused on what you're doing, because every bolt and nut there is like thousands of dollars that you don't want to lose, right? But jokes apart, being in a spacesuit, you're pressurized. And think of it like when you take a car tire and you're trying to bend it, it's really hard, right? The more the pressure, it's harder to bend. So that's what's happening with you is you're in the suit, you have 100% oxygen being pumped into your suit, and the suit literally becomes like this Michelin tire. And then you have to still have the dexterity to fix things and work things. And so you're cognitively really loaded. And physically, being 8 hours in a suit or 7 hours in a suit with no food for that long, it's a test of your endurance and strength. So that's why it's like 100% physical, 100% mental, like running a marathon, taking SATs. In addition to that, you're choreographed, like all of these things are choreographed and you need to work them in a certain order. So maybe when you go back home today, you can wear like 4 or 5 pairs of gloves on your fingers and see if you can even like turn a knob or shower. That tells you how much skill it takes both mentally and physically to do things. And then you're communicating that with the ground teams as you're doing this. Plus you're looking down, especially on the International Space Station, right? Often astronauts say, like, you're looking down and then you see Earth below you. Like the first instinct is like, am I falling? Well, you're literally falling because of the, you're in 0G. But, getting over those instincts and still being able to focus and persevering to finish that task. Spacewalks at NASA or like any other agency that conducts it is a pretty physically, mentally intensive and extremely risky operation, because there's probably maybe 10 millimeters of of material between you and space. So anything can go wrong, and you need to be prepared for that.
Okay, you know, like I watched this movie, right, The Martian. In that was that Matt Damon, he grows potatoes on Mars. Can you actually do that, or is it just like in the movie?
So there's a lot of research actually happening as we speak for growing plants on Mars, as well as, so on the International Space Station, we do grow plants. Like, astronauts have been conducting a lot of experiments using aquaponics and other type of technology. And we've had them actually have that for dinner as well. So those are like techniques that they're developing on seeing how they can grow plants in zero G. And that can be applied to Mars as well. So we cannot be carrying all the food and water that we need for a mission to Mars, because a mission to Mars may take anywhere up to 3 years, including back and forth and then staying there for a year. So we want to understand how do we do things in situ. And that's one of the technologies that's being heavily looked into in growing vegetation and making sure that the astronauts can survive rather than sending all the food from here, which is also going to be very expensive.
Yeah.
So hopefully in the future, in a future mission, that's going to be like the norm.
Akka, 2 weeks back, we had an interaction with Dr. Subaya Arunan, who works at ISRO, and he talked about the Mangalyaan mission and about how it was almost a fraction of the cost of that of the Mars Maven mission. So can you tell us what you think about that?
Yeah, so going to Mars is actually not, like, technologically, and landing on Mars is not very easy, and not many countries have been able to do that. And what India did and what ISRO did is a feat in itself. And they've achieved it in the very first try, which to me is amazing in how they were able to do that at a fraction of cost.
Okay, we saw that you recently moderated a conversation between Sunita Williams and Sadhguru. Can you share us some of your insights from that conversation?
Yeah, actually that was like a vision for 3 years that turned into becoming a reality in October. There was, when I first met Sadhguru, I think the first thing that came to my mind is, so I'm working with astronauts, and for the last 15 years, I've been heavily invested in human spaceflight, and I'm always thinking about how to develop better technology for facilitating better human performance in space, whether that's through spacesuits or and now when I was thinking about the mental and physical challenges astronauts go through in space, and me personally practicing Shambhavi and inner engineering, the first thing that came to my mind, and I told Sadhguru, I want to take Shambhavi into space. That's because I was thinking from the point of the amount of cognitive workload and physical workload astronauts are put through. Something like inner engineering would help as a countermeasure for them to be more effective. And so since then, it was a vision in making where I really wanted to bring together my own passion about exploration, whether that's of outer space or the inner space. And I couldn't think of a better pair. That's why I call them my cosmic dad and my space mom on the same stage. It was definitely a very eye-opening and humbling experience to hear the different aspects from both Sadhguru and Sunita. From Sadhguru, entirely from his inner knowing, and that actually resonated really well from words that Sunny mentioned through her first-hand experience in space. And so, one of the things Sadhguru mentioned, and he called Sunny, you must be a yogi because you're like sitting in that tin can for so long in those tight quarters, and she was there for 9 months, right? So it takes a level of mental stability and inner calm in order to survive such a harsh mission. So it was really eye-opening to hear both the perspectives, and it was a dream come true, to say the least, for me.
So you mentioned meeting Sadhguru and Isha. So what actually brought you here, and how was it doing all the doing samyama and inner engineering?
Yeah, so I'll I'll go back to how I started inner engineering. I grew up in India until my high school, and I've always, being a classical dancer, I knew yoga had, it has its own power. So even though I was doing sort of like studio yoga in the past, it was not until I started, climbing mountains, and I really wanted a very structured pranayama technique so I could carry it with me during my expeditions. I thought I'll do something, I was in search for that. At the same time, my sister, it was right about the time I was finishing my PhD. She called me up one day, she said, Akka, like, you should watch this person's video. He talks about Shiva in a very scientific way. And for me, like, Shiva is very close because, when we think of Shiva, it's dance, space, and mountains, and all three of them, are passions that I have. So I was like, what scientific way? Like, what are you talking about? I never found that video, and I didn't know who this person that she's talking about. She said, the person on the posters with white beard? I was like, okay, let me look it up. And then the first video I saw of Sadhguru was at Harvard. He was talking about consciousness with Dr. Bala, and that blew my mind because it really resonated with me. Because the entire talk was on science, even though it was not directly about Shiva, and then I eventually found that video, it just got me hooked. And then I started listening to it. I learned about inner engineering, and I was like, oh, I want this technique to help me with, my mountaineering. So I pretty much did inner engineering as like a very mechanical thing that I could practice in the morning. But it was not until a few years later when I sat in the lap of the master in 2023 in III, Tennessee, that I actually realized this is much more than just a technique that you do. And I think the rest is history. It was, and that's how the journey started. But it was that from that moment, my inner engineering practices just took on a different shape and intensity. And I was thinking, why not have something like this for people who are, doing such extreme work, like in space? Why can't it be applied to that? So that was like sort of the thing that, started in my mind. And then as an explorer myself, I didn't want to stop. I mean, I love exploration, and it was always, like, inner exploration was always something part of me, but I didn't know the path or how to do it. And so I said, I want to, like, go do Samyama. I think after I met Sadhguru, everything happened. All my programs happened within a span of 8 months, including Kailash
Wow.
and Samyama. So it's been a wonderful journey. It's the connection between, and I call it cosmos to consciousness, I think has naturally shaped, and my curiosity to connect both has taken on a different meaning, and I find it very fascinating, both as a scientist and somebody who wants to explore the within. So every time something happens, I'm like, it's not that I'm trying to find meaning as a scientific explanation, but things like, they come to me as in, oh my God, I learned this in physics, and that's exactly what's happening. You then connect. So I'm glad that this came to me at a point where I've been a scientist all my life, experimented with things in the physical realm, and then now I'm looking at it from a different lens, and I'm able to find that connection between both.
Also, in addition to that, what do you think about, the Dhyanalinga and Devi? They're all these consecrated spaces. So in that, as a scientist, what stood out to you?
Yeah, so in science, we talk about quantum fields and electromagnetic field is everywhere. I think quantum field, when you say that, the word quantum itself is like, it goes over many people's heads, right? So, but if you're looking at it as an electromagnetic field, it's vibration, energy, matter, all of these, you walk into these spaces, and I think if you're paying close attention, and if I'm putting on my science hat, I can actually like tell that you can actually experience it physically, at least for me personally. And there was a moment when I was doing some of my sadhana where I literally, it reminded me of our physics textbook, you know, the right-hand rule with magnetism and then electricity going upward. Think of it as learning it as a concept, but actually experiencing it. I don't think I'll be able to articulate it, and I don't want to spoil that for people who are, you know, watching or trying to find meaning. But it's, I think those experiences are very individual, but it was like that moment of, oh my God, I learned this in physics, and this is like so true. I mean, this is, you know, so true. So I don't think we still understand the science itself in it, but that's what makes it interesting for me as exploration, that as I'm going through this, I always try to, you know, wear that skeptic hat and a science hat to see how does it make sense, or am I like doing it blindly? But I know it's working. So for me, it's even in quantum, you know, I've been reading lately about quantum physics and quantum fields, and I listen to Carl Sagan as well. And there's so many similarities from the science jargon, like the word, the science language, and then what I'm experiencing personally. And it's very fascinating to me. I somehow feel like, you know, coming up with, you know, explanations for everything, but also experimenting, because science requires experimentation and proof, right? There's this, how do I put it, insatiable curiosity and a level of longing to understand every single thing that's happening in these consecrated spaces in a scientific manner.
And sometimes is it like you can't explain what you're feeling, but like
yeah,
the inner
exactly.
scientist needs you to...
Yeah, like the intellectual side of things is like, you know, what is it exactly? And then you're like trying to look through all the science stuff that you've learned. I mean, even when we think about, you know, the space, there's only part of it is matter, everything else is empty, and we've termed it like dark matter and things like that. There's still things that are yet to be discovered in that realm. So there's a lot we don't know. 95% of the universe has not yet been, you know, revealed to us in a scientific way just yet. So all of these things, especially the practices and stuff, are slowly, I get these like small revelations. And so, in fact, in the last 3 months, I ordered so many books because I've been reading like astrophysics and quantum field, and then I pick up a book on, you know, some of the tools that come from the yogic sciences or spiritual books. And I found there were so many times I found parallels between what one book is saying and how it connects to the other book. It was just mind-blowing. I also watch, I don't know if you guys have watched, but if you didn't, you must, Cosmos series by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and in the past it was also by Carl Sagan, who was a very famous astrophysicist. And when you watch those series, even for somebody who's not a seeker, it just triggers something within you, that curiosity and that awe and wonder. And so I think I'm so happy to have found, you know, a path that I can at least practice on a daily basis that sort of gives me this, what can I say, the experience of both inner and outer exploration.
Okay, you know, in a world full of like distractions and stress, how important do you think practices like yoga and like, you know, classical arts are for like peak mental performance?
Especially now, I think they're even more important, right? I mean, only if you can stabilize yourself internally can you do things on the outside. So I think it's very important, no matter what practice you pick up, but you need to build that mental resilience and stability before you go do anything else outside. I mean, even, for example, even Olympic athletes and any other field, like people who've done really well in their field, they spend some time with themselves, right? To not only build their physical abilities and competence, but to have that, the core of their being, you know, stabilized before they can take on big challenges. So I think it's very important, and I'm glad that, you know, we come from a country where this has been offered on a platter for us, and why not make use of it? Yeah.
Okay, can you talk a bit about like how science and spirituality really connect, and like what, like, and Sanatana Dharma, like how does it all connect?
Just think of it, you're probably aware of resonance, right, in vibration. Yeah. So when you bring something, you know, when your frequency matches the frequency of the field, you're now in resonance. And what happens in resonance? The amplitude just keeps increasing, right? And so that means like when your amplitude increases, like the intensity of it increases. And that's what we're trying to do, I think. I don't know, this is my humble scientific explanation, but I think that's what we're trying to do is we polish our antennas so that we can pick up on this field and resonate with that field that's out there, which we call Shiva or consciousness or whatever it is. And we are trying to increase the pitch of our, that amplitude that we have. Yeah. So that's what
experience.
Not just experience, like there's things happening inside. It's just we can't see. It's like air is around us, but we can't really see air. But it's there. You cannot deny it, right? Yeah. So same way, like there is a field that is unknown to us because we've never discovered it just yet. Only yogis probably have discovered it. So it's all around us. It's just tapping into it with the right, tuning our frequency to that frequency, and then increasing the amplitude, like you get into resonance so that you're also moving with the same frequency. Maybe we're like so incoherent right now that we miss what's happening here. Mm-hmm. So once you are at the same frequency, now you're like going in sync. And I feel like when Sadhguru says grace is with you, when grace is with you, things happen. It's because you're moving at the same frequency of whatever the field is out there. So things happen in a much more easier way, if you will. That's, I don't know, that's like,
okay, it's really cool. Like we're trying to, it kind of makes more sense now.
Yeah,
definitely. When you talk about it from a scientific perspective.
Because it's not just you, just everyone around here in the ashram also. You as kids, we generally just ask questions about what are you feeling? Because I don't feel it personally, and so this gives me more of a better understanding of what this is.
Even in dance, right? Like I was in Chidambaram just 2 weeks ago performing, and I went. Chidambaram is a space for space. It's a space element, and that's where Lord Nataraja danced. Like he's holding the drum and the fire in one hand, and then you have the circle around him. I mean, he's a cosmic dancer, which really. There's also shlokam in Natya Shastra, which talks about each element, what it represents. But from a science perspective, like the dance is basically vibration, and vibration is what created. Matter is vibration, energy is vibration. So the Damaru represents creation, because Damaru is what it's creating a sound, which is vibration, and from vibration came, creation. And then the fire is destruction, which is entropy. If you studied, science, physics, it's entropy. Everything has to go down to be transformed and come back. So, but energies cannot be created, not destroyed. It just keeps transforming itself. So there's like such a beautiful representation. I feel in Sanatana Dharma, we've symbolized everything so common people can understand it without having to. Not everyone gets science, right? So I feel that's what I've been thinking, especially after listening to Sadhguru's videos, and how does this all relate? Like, why did we do this? And
okay, you talked about the Nataraja statue, and all of us also know about the Nataraja statue at the CERN laboratory in Europe.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think that relates to like?
Yeah, so at CERN they do particle physics, right? Yeah. They accelerate particles, and I'm not a quantum physicist, so my knowledge there is very minimal, but it's all the vibration at the subatomic level. So when you think of Nataraja, his dance is basically, to me, I feel like is representative of all the vibration that's happening in the universe. So it's a representation of that subatomic vibration that is the basis of creation and matter and energy. So it's very recently, in fact, I posted when I was doing this dance at Chidambaram, I actually had it as my Instagram post. Like, did you know, like, CERN actually has this Nataraja in front of, I think India gifted it to CERN, which is very, very fascinating. Again, it's a symbolic representation. People with devotion can see it. Like in India, I think in India we have people who follow Sanatana Dharma but have different views, like how they approach it. One approaches it with devotion, one with scientific mind, which is the intellectual path of yoga, and the other through, like what they call about karma yoga, which is through action. So there's these different paths, and it gives that freedom for us to express, but it all converges into the same essence of what it is. In this trip that I've been here, primarily like I was going around performing in different places, but also it was a way for me to experience temples. And so I was walking into these temples, again, wearing a scientific hat. And whether it's architecture that's there in these 4,000-year-old temples, to the way the rituals are being conducted, to the materials that were used in this architecture, and the placement of things was very, very interesting to me. Even to think about like 4,000 years ago, I'm looking at these carved, temples with very specific symbolic representation. Even to think about how did people even, like what kind of technology did they have to make, I was looking at these temples where they had these linked chains made out of stone. Like they were stone, but it was a linked chain. Like what kind of technology did they have? I mean, I could 3D print it right now, but to sculpt that even. And you see a lot of metal in the main core of the temple. There's also this Dvajastambham, right, in front of every temple,
like the pillar.
And then that, like the Dvajastambham, I was thinking of it, and I haven't spent enough time to link everything to science as such, because I do know like some people, there are also some skeptics that say, oh, this is pseudoscience, So in that sense, like I was not trying to like link everything, but I was just looking at it, a thought came to me. So when we do our rocket launches and stuff, we have like towers that are put around the rocket to protect from lightning. So then it just, I mean, it's not that I've sat down and done like all calculations and like really experimented, but I was just staring at it. I was like, why is this Dvajastambham here? It's made of metal and it's exactly in front of every temple. What happens if lightning comes, and what is it? Like, is it something like it's, taking in some sort of electromagnetic field and like spreading it into, you think of, I think as naturally as scientists, like you think of like what's the physics behind it, right? Like that's the first thing and just, copper everywhere. We use copper in our wires, right? Like why did they use copper? Why didn't they think of using something else? And so like these are the kind of questions I went in with, and it was really humbling to know, okay, if there is really a scientific reason behind it, how did they know without technology that we have now? Maybe they had technology that we are not aware of in the sense that we are aware of right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, same way how when we talk about is there alien life out there, maybe when we're thinking about alien life, for example, we are only expecting it to look like humans or look like an animal. Even like in all the movies that we see, there's something that we've already seen just morphed a little bit here and there, right? With an extra tooth or horn or something. But maybe, was there like a technology back in the day where it's nothing like what we see right now, but it existed, that they had insights into some of these, and that's why, and I got to visit 3 of the 5 element temples. So there are 5 temples that represent the 5 elements. So I went to Chidambaram, which is the space element. And then there was Bhumi element, which is the earth, where the Shivalingam is made up of sand. And it's been standing there for, I don't even think they dated it. So it was like, I don't know how many thousands of years ago. And then in Arunachalam is the fire element. So why did people think of making the 5 elements, which we know is the core basis of all of our existence, right? And they have specific architecture to enter and exit these temples. So sometimes I always wish, I wish we had all these cameras and drones since the beginning of age, so somebody could record a time lapse of how things. Yeah, and then did we lose the technology or knowledge at some point where then it was just by word of mouth, and then that sort of translated, and now we just do it as a matter of fact. Oh, my grandma told me you need to go three rounds around the temple. Oh, my mom told me do this. But maybe there was really to to build something like that lasted 4,000 years and even more, the technology must have been really advanced in the past. It's just, it may not look like our additive manufacturing machines and other machines that we have now. This trip has been very, for me, like intellectually, it has been very fulfilling.
You know, like I also thought about it a lot, Akka, because like, you know, if you know, right, the big temple in Thanjavur, the Periya Koil, in that the top, right, it's like many tons, I'm not sure how much, and no one really knows. Like I think they kind of made sense that they moved it with elephants, but it was like a lot of confusion on how they put it up there, because it's like so heavy and like it will be like tough for even modern cranes to move it.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like if there was a better understanding of, you know, what they thought of back then, it could better translate into more people, you know, following the same thing, not just Sanatana Dharma, but just these beliefs in general.
Yeah.
Because I think word of mouth is where it kind of got lost.
I'm also feeling, and just over the last 20 years, the way technology has changed even for us, right? When I started off, when I was in high school, we didn't even have, well, we had cell phones, but not in India as much. And then cell phones to smartphones to AI to, and when you look at documentation within the 20 or 30 years, right, it's changing. Like we had books to now, like everything's on your phone. I wonder, like 10 years from now, everything's going to be on cloud, right? Like the documentation. So just thinking like past, it was word of mouth. They used to say it was transmitted through thoughts. So that was a technology where they could actually like transmit things through thoughts, at least from the Puranas that we learned, right? Like people in Satyuga or something, they transmitted things through, they never spoke. So if I could look at you. And then now I'm like, okay, I know that Elon Musk is working on Neuralink. Like, so is that like, sort of like, do they have that kind of, maybe not the physical manifestation of the chip inside the brain, but there was something to do with leveraging the electromagnetic field of thought. Was it that? And again, yes, you're right that I wish we really had some documentation from thousands of years ago. And from now and looking into the future, it's also a little worrisome. As much as technology is improving and AI is going to make our life very, you know, easier, are we going to lose some of this? Or can we leverage AI to sort of go back into the past and understand how things were formed and learned, and can we actually document it so we can learn the actual scientific aspects of what we've been doing in the temples or leveraging these tools, and you know, yeah.
Akka, we've heard of your many accomplishments, so can we rewind to how it all started? In India, there's this huge pressure of having your life sorted by 10th grade. And so were you that super topper kid who knew exactly what they wanted to do, or did you just find your path as you went?
I will start by saying, so at the age of 3, I remember I told my parents, you know, in India we have terraces, right? And in the past, you know, parents would come try to feed you dinner. So it was always usually on the terrace. And that, like, looking up to the sky really inspired me. And I was a very curious child as a kid, and the moon really inspired me. So I would ask my parents and my dad questions. Are there sharks on the moon? Are there, you know, and my dad and I used to watch a lot of National Geographic Channel. So that curiosity just kept on developing. There was a point, I mean, I always wanted to, I asked my dad, can I like study about space? Can I go into space? So that was there, that passion and that deep longing was always there. I know also there was a point where I would watch movies and, oh, I want to be IAS. I want to be this. I want to be like whoever I saw, right? Like a big movie thing. I want to be that. I want to be this. And my dad specifically, I remember, I think in 5th or 6th grade said, you know, whatever it is you do, like, you stick to your path, like make a commitment and continue that journey. And you know, my mom was equally supportive of anything that I wanted to do. When I was in 10th grade, but overall they used to tell me whatever it is you do, 10th, 11th and 12th are your foundations for life. I remember that my dad and mom like saying that so many times that it sort of like stuck in my head, and I was like, okay, 10th, 11th, 12th, I'm gonna do really well, and then I'm not gonna worry about it, right? So I was one of those nerdy students. But I would also say dance really helped me because it gave the discipline I needed and the focus that I needed. Those were the skills that were important that translated into my education. In 11th and 12th, I took MPC with the goal of doing engineering. But I knew I wanted to do engineering related to space stuff. I did get into BITS Pilani, but I really wanted to work at NASA, and my dad ended up moving to the US to facilitate that. Nothing really interested me than this longing to learn and do something in the space field.
Okay, like you talked about how your journey started. Can you talk about like your roadmap to NASA and how like it went through?
Oh, it's never a straight path. I wish it were like you're put on a rocket and there's a trajectory. There's all these like course corrections that, had to be done, right? So my dad left India when I was 10. When I was in 10th grade. And then he wanted me to finish my high school here, so you have that solid foundation. And I did get trained for IIT, so I could get into IIT Aerospace Department and BITS Pilani Aerospace as well. But I really wanted to go to US and study at some of the top aerospace schools there, but had no clue how to do that. And then as an immigrant, so I moved after high school. So life of an immigrant is not easy. My dad primarily moved for me and my sister for my education at the age of 45. So he literally left everything and took a chance moving to the United States. So I knew which university I wanted to go to for my undergrad and then for my master's. And there wasn't, in India, at least in the past, there wasn't a concept of mentorship, and education is slightly different here versus in the United States. There it's a lot more hands-on. I think now it's being revamped here. So just getting adjusted there wasn't easy. But at the same time, one thing I knew that I was really good at math and science because I know it was like rubbed into us. I think in India, like they just rub it into you. So while I was in undergrad, I used to work a part-time job, 2 part-time jobs, and then go to school. So it was not like a straight path. I had to it was very hard to see the end of the tunnel, but I knew this is the only thing I really wanted to invest my life in. So I still remember my dad when I was 18, he said, you identify what your passion is and you stick to it. You can't keep wavering. You need to commit because it doesn't matter whether you reach your end goal, but the journey teaches you a lot of lessons. The goal is not to, okay, I'm only gonna do this for the goal. But it is to identify your true potential, what are you capable of? And that's what makes life more interesting and much more worthy to pursue, a specific passion. And that sort of stuck in me. And throughout, college, I was doing this part-time job and then education. And we were not citizens immediately. We were green card holders. So I couldn't get into NASA right away. So I did internships at Boeing, and then luckily got to work at Lockheed Martin as well when they first started Orion spacecraft. I thought I'll go straight to doing my master's. It didn't happen that way, even though I got into MIT. I took a break because I wanted to work on this project. So it's not, I just found when a lot of people think, even yesterday, somebody in the ashram was asking me, oh, I saw your Instagram post, it seems like you had such a smooth life. I'm like, I don't know what you mean, life has its way of teaching you things, I think. And as long as you are open-minded, and for me, the most important thing is to have a growth mindset and availing any opportunity that comes your way and not drawing a box around yourself that this is what I'm gonna do and then I'm not gonna do this. I think that sort of limits you. I will say that just as an example, when my dad said, you will face challenges, more than technical challenges, right, in terms of education. So I knew I wanted to work at NASA and maybe one day fly in space. So I was also on the side preparing myself to become an astronaut, which needs, a certain level of competencies. And as a kid, I was afraid of water. But I knew they had to be dive certified. So I remember in my college, like MIT, there was one summer when I went in, I had learned swimming barely just before we left to US, and then I didn't swim for several years. And then I knew after my master's, things are gonna ramp up with my career, and I went into the pool. We have this large Olympic-sized swimming pool. I started swimming with the goal of, okay, I need to learn how to swim and then go do my dive certification. I could barely swim, maybe quarter lap, not even a quarter lap. But then 3 months, I would go there every other day or sometimes every day and swim and self-learned. And at the end of the summer term, I was able to swim the entire Olympic lap, 40 laps. And I was so proud of myself because, okay, now I'm not really afraid of water. Then I went and did my dive certification. So when I told my dad that, he said, do you remember what I told you? So I think it's that, the commitment to your passion and that perseverance that really pushes you out of your comfort zone. It was physically and mentally very challenging. No showers for 15 days, and you're carrying 70-pound loads, and you have to even carry your poop with you. It wasn't easy, and it was raining pretty much every day, but you still bring the best for you, for yourself, and for the team that you're in. And working at NASA, and how the astronaut team is trained, that's the most important thing, is teamwork and putting yourself aside and working for the larger vision of whatever the team is doing. So had I not had this passion for space, I don't think I would have put myself in such uncomfortable positions. And you learn a lot about your own self as you do that.
Also, Akka, you mentioned passion. So a lot of students our age are, struggling to find what their passion is. So did you always have a passion for space, or was it an interest, and then, how did it translate into knowing that you want to pursue this?
Yeah, as I was saying, at 3, it was almost oh, I want to go to space. And I think watching the National Geographic and Discovery Channel just made it even more interesting. And there was a point where I had to choose between what engineering, I was looking for something that could challenge me and the longing I had, and aerospace felt something that was unattainable. And that's why I ended up choosing that, because all my friends were either into computer science or mechanical and electrical, but this was just felt so fascinating. So I was going to give it a try and then see, because there were also people around who said, oh, there's not enough jobs in aerospace. And that was one thing that didn't bother me, is whether I would get paid well or not. I just wanted to do this. So for students out there, I always tell them, you may have more than one passion, something that interests you. Write that down and sit with it for some time. And more importantly, start talking to people who say you're interested in, you find being a doctor very fascinating, and something else fascinating. Then I think it's a matter of tapping into it by leveraging resources around you, whether that's talking to your teachers or, getting in touch with people who are into those different areas, and finding what their experiences are, what is it, and then maybe even experimenting in your internships. And that's where internships really matter. And I did get to do that couple of internships before I went in full time. And then I ended up, my PhD was in an area that in spacesuits, but I was not exposed to spacesuits and the love for this life sciences until I finished my undergrad and I started working at Lockheed. I went to a conference called, it was a conference on life sciences, basically. It was aerospace medicine. And when I walked in and I was with these MD, PhD people, and I was just an undergrad then, I was first of all, I was wow, all these MD, PhDs. And they started talking about space and how space impacts body, which was a topic I never heard of in the past. And it was so fascinating. So I think sometimes you may have a specific idea about what you want to do, but then you build your network, you get mentors, and you get exposed to new things, which might help you shape your future as well. So I would definitely encourage students to not only put down what your interests are and start talking to people, sit with it for several days at a time and start experimenting. If you have opportunities and internships, like start going and maybe even shadowing, right? Which would give you, is this something that I want to do?
Okay, we have like over 300 space startups in India, like Skyroot, Red Balloon, Vrisva. So this is actually really huge for like high schoolers in India, because it might mean that we don't have to go to the US to pursue a career in space. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I'm actually so happy to know that the space economy and the space ecosystem within India is booming like anything. And a lot of the companies that you mentioned, they're all good friends of mine. So the next 50 years, I think in India is going to be, it's like 50 years ago when US was at that nascent stages building up the space industry. That's where India is now. And with, I think, like 75% of our country being youth, I mean, there's so much energy. And there's one great thing about how India invests in space is we often, if you look at the Indian space system, or like the overview of how we utilize space, it's primarily for applications. Less about exploration, but primarily applications, like from farming to other things, right? So we have been like very smart, like India has been very smart in how they leverage space with the little amount of budget they get. And now all of the, space companies are just adding to that value of it. And very soon we're gonna have these orbital launches of, Skyroot, I think, is launching their orbital test flight, and Red Balloon will be launching something. And so it's really wonderful to see the opportunities that it's creating, the economy that's building, because I feel not just in India, but overall around the globe, the next 50 years is going to be a boom in the space field itself, just because we are realizing how much we can leverage space and bring back the benefits to our planet.
Akka, what are your thoughts on space tourism? Is it just like a billionaire's hobby, or does it actually help for the humanity as a whole?
Yeah, so there's this whole exploration side of space, right? But then there's only a very small number of people or countries that are invested in exploration of space. We also need as much public support to grow that area. And I think that's where sort of space tourism comes in to help spread that word. But the other aspect of space tourism, I think, which is really important, is that when astronauts actually go into space, they come back with what they refer to as the overview effect, which is like seeing Earth, from up above. You realize the fragility of our planet and our responsibility to keep it intact, as well as the realization that it's one planet. We're one family. So if you're able to give that overview to every single person on Earth, I think the way we would navigate through whether it's politics or the everyday life would probably change a lot. So I see space tourism providing that foundation to build this sort of perspective for everyone. Of course, right now, as you mentioned, it's probably like a billionaire or millionaire thing because it's expensive to fly into space. But the whole point of the commercial companies that are facilitating some of this space tourism is to make it more accessible to a common person to access space. And whether it's you're going there for having a jolly ride and coming back with this unique perspective of having seen Earth from above and how that maybe transforms you in leading your life on Earth, or even for students like you all and others, researchers, leveraging this platform to go do unique science and technology development or projects that will also change your perspective, not just in working with people around you, but also the technology you're developing. So it is needed, but I think it'll take some time to get where everyone can. I mean, my wish is we could just purchase a ticket like we do in Indigo, right? And like fly from one place to another. So just have that, that unique perspective. I hope it gets to a point where everyone gets a chance to see planet Earth as, one big planet.
Do you also think that it could have like ill effects? Like, once it becomes more accessible, maybe now everyone wants to go, and the emissions and everything. Do you think that could?
So there's a lot of research happening on the other side for emissions, like leveraging maybe biofuels. There's a lot of research happening in that area as well. But I will say that yes, as we go through and increase our cadence of operations in space, we also need to be more conscious of how we do that and the intention behind it. And that was one of the primary themes of the panel that I held with Sadhguru and Sunita Williams, is conscious space exploration, right? Like, how do we consciously explore space that we don't make a mess out of it, just like we've been doing here on Earth for our planet. So I think it takes that deliberate action and thought process by leaders, global space leaders, whether that's policy creation and collaboration between different countries. I think we need to invest a lot more time and effort, especially by the leaders that make these decisions, in making this not only accessible, but also safe. And I usually call it conscious space exploration for a conscious planet, right? Like, we need to be thinking in those terms as we expand our operations in space.
How important do you think it is for Indians across the world to stay rooted in their culture and tradition?
It's truly a privilege to be born in a land so ancient with such rich culture and heritage, where we've really spent thousands of years investing in evolution of human spirit through various aspects, whether it's philosophy, science, or arts. So to me, I see science and arts go together. And I often say this, that science strengthens the mind, while arts strengthen your soul. And Bharatanatyam for me, which I started learning at a very young age, really gave me the needed focus and discipline and commitment, and teamwork. And I often quote that, it's turning fear into focus, because when you're entering a stage and you see like that, hundreds of people standing in front of you, you need to really have that mental stability and the competence to convert that fear into focus, and also I also say, like, transforming your anxiety into excitement so you can connect with the audience. And the same sort of discipline and resilience is needed when you're pursuing science as well. So a lot of what I do in my scientific research and background, I often credit my art, Bharatanatyam, for giving me that foundation in doing that.
Akka, we've read about your NGO Project Shakti, which helps underprivileged students in India get education. Can you talk to us a bit about your NGO and what led you to start it?
Sure. So a couple of years ago, I started a nonprofit called Passion to Purpose, basically taking my passion for exploration and channeling to for this purpose of educating, elevating, and empowering underprivileged children. And that happened, it was a consequence of certain experiences that happened in my life, especially around when I had my daughter a few years ago. And I was also going through some major transformation within my career. And it dawned on me, at home I have a lot of support system, both from my parents and my husband. And it dawned on me that not everyone is as privileged as some of us, where I had a passion and I had all the support to do it. And often growing up, my dad used to say, as much as you work towards fulfilling your passion or your goals, it's very important that you give back to the community. So then I thought, I want to do something for people who are unable to make their ends meet, especially in education. And that's when a thought occurred to me that I wanted to sponsor maybe a couple of kids in my village back in India who are underprivileged and unable to go to a school, but they want to have an education. And I had visited an orphanage. This was after I had my daughter. And it actually moved me quite a bit, just looking at the enthusiasm and the innocence of these kids, but in the situation they are in, where they were all so bright and they had these big dreams. I want to be a doctor, I want to do this, I want to do that. And every time I look at my daughter, and every time I looked into her eyes, even as, when she was like 2 years old, I would look deeply and I would think, oh my God, like you can do anything you wish to. You have such infinite potential. And all I need to do is provide that platform to you and you can flower, right? So that sort of thought came into me, and then I wasn't just sure how to go about doing it. At the same time, I wanted to do something where it was not just I'm paying for your education and then you go do it, but it was more importantly, it was two things. One is inspire the kids that they can dream big. It's not just like education doesn't end when you graduate from your school, but what is it that really pushes you beyond, right? What is that really pushes you to understand your full potential? And the second aspect, which was more important, was also to sort of educate parents, especially in India, where I found that once you're a girl, there's sort of restrictions in what you can and cannot do. They're sort of imposed. Even if somebody wants to maybe become a pilot or something else, it's like, oh, you're a girl, you need to get married, you can't do this and do that. And so I wanted parents to have, especially because my mom, even till date, I come back and I go to her and I say, I want to do this. I throw out like some crazy idea. And she goes, okay, go do it. Just be careful. Just go do it, right? So whether it's running off into the mountains or wanting to ride a motorbike, like she's never said, oh, you're a girl. Like, how are you going to do it? All she said was, just be careful, whatever you're doing, and give it your full shot, right? So, and I often saw it's very different in families here in India. It's not like that. So then I thought, okay, how do I do it? And I had some support from my husband's side as well, from my in-laws as well. And so I started this nonprofit. Part of that nonprofit is Project Shakti, an initiative specifically geared towards educating and empowering underprivileged girl children. And how do you inspire students, right? Like, okay, I'll go give them scholarships, but how do you put a thought into, sometimes it's not about, okay, somebody is educating me, so I'm learning this, but they need to see some role models or even experience something that triggers, oh, I can also do this. So I thought, need to leverage exploration and need to do something that really helps them see themselves in doing such acts, right? So I thought, okay, why not mountaineering and some explorative activities? So since then, I've done a couple of expeditions where climbing high altitude mountains. So the first mountain that I climbed and collaborated with another mountaineer was we climbed a unclimbed peak in Ladakh, which was 20,000 feet. It was unnamed, unclimbed, so a virgin peak, where we were able to, it's still in process, but we could actually name the peak, and then wanting to do like a short documentary on this and raise funds to start giving scholarships to children. And then I did another mountain in South America, which is Aconcagua, which is the tallest mountain in South America, highest outside of Himalayas. It's close to 23,000 feet. And so far, I was able to raise money to educate about 30 kids. 20 of them are from Isha Vidya, where we were able to provide education support, scholarship for 1 year. And I have an upcoming expedition in July that I plan to do from bike ride from Manali to Leh and then climb 20,000 feet mountains. It's called Stoke Kangri 2. And apart from this, the goal was also to connect with them and help them feel that they can, reach out to people and have the kind of mentorship that they need. So I also conduct motivational speaking events for them as well. And then in the US, I had a couple of students who also volunteered so they could also understand the situation in India and develop some community service skills and leadership skills as well. Mm-hmm. So it was a small effort that it was just based out of personal experiences and the gratitude towards the people who made it possible for me. And if I could at least put a spark in a few kids, that's it's giving back to the community.
Akka, you're also a huge advocate for women in STEM. So did you ever feel like you had to work twice as hard just to be heard in a room full of men at Boeing or MIT. What is your advice for young kids who dare to dream big in this space?
So I'll start with, and I share this with every student and every motivational talk that I do, based on my own personal experience. I call it the 5 C's. Working in the space industry, we're so used to acronyms. So I call it the 5 C's and 3 I's. So whether it's a space field or any field, whether you're in sports, arts, or science, technology, anything, right? What worked for me, and hopefully a few pointers for the audience listening and to you all, is my first C is having the courage to dream big. No matter how much support you have from others or people telling you what to do, I think we ourselves are the builders of our destiny. So we need to step up for ourselves and have the courage to dream big. The next C is clarity. Spend some time with whatever it is that you want to do, right? Like to build the clarity. I think Sadhguru also often says that it's not confidence that comes first. It needs to be clarity that comes first, right? So knowing, what it is that you really want to do and having a clear vision of whatever it is, the dream or your passion. The third is commitment. And I think commitment, and then the next C is consistency. These 2 things have been so, time and again in my life, have been the core of what's helped me get to whatever it is I'm doing. Because once you make up your mind in doing something, I think it's very important that you commit, not for a day or for a couple of days, but doing it consistently over and over. And I think that sort of falls into having the discipline, right? Whether you're doing sadhana or you're dancing or you have to fly a mission, you need to have that commitment and consistency. The next C is compassion. So compassion both ways. Compassion for people around you, as well as compassion to yourself. And I say that because, when you're doing things with commitment and consistency, you may not always, your 100% may not always be the same every day. And you give yourself some grace as you do that, right? So these are my 5 C's. And I also say, so guided by 5 C's and fueled by 3 I's. And the 3 I's are intention, like doing things with the right intention, and knowing your intention behind why you're doing it is very important, I feel. Next is involvement, giving your 100% involvement in everything that you're doing, and the intensity. The third I is intensity. And when I first wake up in the morning, I think the only thing I tell myself is I want to give my 100% today. And then when I hit my bed, I sort of reflect on that and whether I gave my 100% today for that day. It's not tomorrow, it's not for next year. For that day, did I give my 100%? And that 100% can vary every single day. But if you have no regrets in what you've put in for that day, that consistency, the commitment and discipline will grow. So these are some of the things that I've personally experienced and I use and I share it with kids and people around when they ask me about advice.
I'm gonna keep that in mind.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think it's also more importantly having a growth mindset, right? And when I say courage, it's not just courage to dream big. It's also to try and risk, putting yourself in a position to risk and experiment with things. So having that growth mindset really helps, and choose something, even when you have a dream or a project or something that you're doing, like think through all your not only strengths, but also weaknesses, and see how you can get out of your comfort zone to break each of them, and try to do that consistently too, because I feel every human has infinite potential. And I keep learning that every time I look into my daughter's eyes, right? At some point, we both end up losing our curiosity and the courage to do things. Because when you look at 5-year-olds or 6-year-olds, they want to do everything, and they do everything. They run around, they fall, everything. So at some point, like, we become so restrictive that we don't try to get out of a comfort zone. But it's only when you get out of your comfort zone, you really realize what your potential is.
Okay, you do so much, like you're at NASA, Bharatanatyam, scuba diving, mountaineering. Like, do you even have like the same like 24 hours as the rest of us? Like, you know, do you take some time out sometimes, you know, just sit on your couch and, you know, scroll through Instagram sometimes?
Good question. I mean, lately it's been a jam-packed day, and I often wonder, I wish I had like 48 hours a day, because sometimes, and a lot of these things that I'm doing, it's not that I do everything once, right? Yeah. There are moments like when I had to, you know, build my career, I really focused on that, you know, and I think like people who've done it in their own fields, they take the time, and you have to have that same consistency and discipline to work through all of those challenges. So nothing's like, I'm not climbing a mountain and dancing and doing research all on the same day. Yeah. So it has its own, you know, they come in time, you know, periods. So this month I really wanted to perform, so I spent like months just preparing for it. So it takes that commitment to do your best and thing. But when I'm here, I'm not thinking about work. Mm-hmm. So same thing. Once I'm at work, I'm used to like compartmentalizing, and I think the sadhana that I do really helps with that, especially because if you want to be doing multiple things and not just do it, I believe in doing your best, not best compared to others, but what is your best that you can do. And in order to do that, you need to be like so focused on what you're doing. So I've learned to sort of compartmentalize my brain and the activity that I do. So even if I'm working only, say, for 2 hours on something, I'm completely focused on those 2 hours, and then I switch. Mm-hmm. So same, my day starts at 4:15 a.m. in the morning, and I do my sadhana, everything in the morning, so I don't have to think about it. And then the rest of the day, right? And then when I'm home with my daughter, I want to spend that time with her, so I just like focus on that. And when I have to dance somewhere in between, like I have, you know, it takes a lot of discipline to do that. And again, I credit my Bharatanatyam days when I was training under my gurus here in India, that they've sort of instilled that discipline in me.
And now on to our signature Isha Vibes Rapid Fire.
Short questions.
Quick answers.
No overthinking.
Oh my goodness, you know, that's like a completely opposite for somebody who works on space missions, because we have to like plan every single thing ahead of time.
What's the best tasting space?
Ooh, I've done a few simulation missions, and we got to eat like the astronaut food. I really like their chicken tikka masala.
Whoa!
I don't eat chicken anymore, but when I tried it a few years ago, it was amazing.
Akka, we heard Sunita Williams took a samosa to space. What would you take?
I would take a picture of Hanuman.
How long do you think a Swiggy order would take to reach Mars?
Swiggy order? 8 months for travel. But then by the time we have to place an order and pack it, it's another 6 months. So you can add the, you know,
but they're like
14
quick
months.
though.
Yeah, but we need to package it and
okay.
launch it, and it has to go through all the testing and all that stuff. So about 14 months.
Okay, have you met Elon Musk?
No, I've heard him speak at conferences, but no, I haven't personally.
Okay, if not a scientist, what's the career that you'd want to be?
A space doctor.
What's your favorite space movie?
Oh, I have quite a few. I loved Martian. I love Interstellar. I mean, for Interstellar, it's like such an abstract concept, and bringing that to life, it takes quite some, you know, brains to do that. So I really love those two movies, and of course, like all of the previous Star Wars, Star Trek, like any space movie that's done well. And now, like when we watch some movies, like you can't take your mind off, oh my God, that's not how we do it. Oh my God, that's not how we do it. This is like, you can't just like land and like start walking, you know, once you land from space. So some of that comes in now, but I think I really enjoyed watching Martian and Interstellar. And of course, like Star Trek has been, I'm a Trekkie, so.
Okay, what's your favorite Telugu movie?
Oh my goodness, there's so many.
One.
Off the top of your head.
Some favorite movies that come to my mind is Swayam Khushi by Chidambaram, because that's where, like, you know, my dad used to talk about hard work, and that's no replacement for anything. And then I watched that movie, it's like, oh my God, you know, this is what it means, you know. So that's one movie I really love, and I love all K. Vishwanath Garu movies, especially on dance and arts, right? Like really amazing, Sagar Sangamam and all of that, Swarna Kamalam. And then lately, of course, Bahubali, right? And Kalki is also like futuristic. I really like that. Yeah, there's quite a few.
Do you have any fears or phobias?
Fear of water.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, it was quite some working within myself to become a swimmer and then dive. And like now diving, it's also like when I go into the water at like first, it's like, oh my God, I'm in a different environment. But once I'm in like the scuba gear and I go, it's like meditation for me. Mm-hmm. So it took a lot to like retrain my brain for that.
Okay, what's your favorite way to unwind?
Dancing.
What's your favorite dive?
I would say Maldives. It was amazing to be amongst the huge manta rays. Mm-hmm. And we did this dive where like manta rays go over your head and it's like a spaceship literally going above your head. And it was amazing to have that experience.
They come like all the way to the shore.
Yeah, not just shore, like even we went to their feeding grounds. So we were sitting and like just sitting and watching them. We were about maybe like 60 feet. And they come so close to you, mm-hmm. And they go around and with this huge wingspan, right? I think like as the wingspan was like anywhere between 10 to 14 feet. Wow. So them like just flying over felt like you're watching that movie Independence where, you know, the spaceship is going over you. Yeah. Like
a spacesuit or sari?
I'll wear a spacesuit over my sari if I can.
Akka, can you tell us one NASA scientist joke?
One thing that often comes to my mind, because it both applies to the meetings that I sit in, you know, at NASA, long meetings, or whether I'm doing Isha programs, is so inside a spacesuit, because astronauts have to be in space for 8 hours at a time, right, doing these spacewalks, they wear what's called a MAG, maximum absorbency garment, aka adult diaper. Okay. So there are often times when I'm sitting in meetings and I'm like these long meetings, I'm like talking to my colleagues like, you know what, we should have worn a MAG today. And then the same thing occurs to me, like, you know, when doing samyama and things like that, it's like, oh my God, I wish I had my MAG on. I can't like, I need to like be in this meditation, but I have to go. You know?
Okay, most challenging hike, Aconcagua or Kilimanjaro?
Aconcagua, oh my God. It's like, it's a completely different level of physical endurance you need because Kilimanjaro itself is like 19,341 feet. That's the summit. Our highest camp in Aconcagua was higher than that, like 19,500 or something like that. So having like spent a night there and then you're already at such reduced oxygen and then the next day it just gets worse and worse. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dosa or pancakes?
Dosa.
3 people dead or alive you'd love to have dinner with?
Sadhguru, Swami Vivekananda, Elon Musk.
What is one mantra that you'd live your life?
Give it your all. Like no matter what, like just give it your all.
Is there one person you'd like to leave behind in space?
I don't want to be that mean. Maybe every time I fight with my husband, that's how I feel.
Okay, that was an amazing rapid fire session. This has been so much fun. Like at least one small thing I'm taking away from this is like at least space is much more than just rockets and there's so much to your mindset and like commitment towards it.
And just also that you don't just have to choose one path, science, art, service, you can do it all. And thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. This has been such an inspiring conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, namaskaram. And it's really a pleasure to see such an amazing initiative by young people like you who are, who have big dreams in the future. So thank you very much for this. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Isha Vibes and until next time.
Namaskaram.